So, are you curious?
Welcome to the Curiosity Codex. I am your ardent enthusiast, Kyle Olson, and with me is my hapless cohort, Rob Cabasco.
Hey, what's going on?
Yeah, we're back. Now we're going to see what the show proper is. We're going to kick some tires and light some fires and see what we can do.
Oh.
So, before we open the book to our next chapter, I wanted to take a moment to thank everybody who took the time to listen to the pilot episode, which was about Zack Snyder's Justice League and the road that sort of led up to it. Like most pilot episodes, it was overlong, it was full of threads that never went anywhere, and barely representative of where the show will go. So I feel like we're in pretty good company there. What I'm trying to do here in the Codex is make some of the odd fascinations of modern pop culture more accessible to those who haven't been drinking it in their whole lives. I'm not an expert in anything, really. I'm a dilettante, with all the positive and negative connotations that implies. So nothing in the show is meant to be final or definitive or complete. I am skimming the surfaces of much, much deeper waters, and I'm hoping to inspire you to explore on your own interest levels. This show isn't a dissertation. It's my caffeine-fueled rant at a Denny's at 2 a.m. I'm not trying to convince you that something is either good or bad, worthy of your attention or not worthy of it. There's plenty of hot takes out there on the internet, and I'm not interested in being those. I want to give you handholds to scale the edifices of accumulated lore, because it's going to take both a phaser and a bat'leth to carve into this one, because we're cracking the book on the final frontier. This is the first of a 5-part series entitled Trek Across the Stars. And I know this can seem daunting. The show's been running for 54 years. There's been 10 television series, 13 movies, not to mention all the video games and the books and all these things. The number that came out at the start of this year was that there had been 800 different Star Trek adventures. So I know, like, it seems like it's just impossible to get into. You think anime is hard to get into? It's got nothing on Star Trek. But this is why I wanted to do this show in particular, and also why it's going to take multiple episodes, because Star Trek is not a one-size-fits-all sort of thing. And so you're going to see, as we talk about it, I'm going to try and make it as accessible as possible, because it really is not as daunting as it seems. So Rob, before we get too far into the lore, can you tell us a little bit about your feelings and experiences with Star Trek?
Oh, okay. So that's a perfect introductory question. By the way, here's the deal. If I had to explain what you just said,
yes,
this show is the celebration of exuberant fandom. That's it.
Ooh, yes.
There we go.
I would agree with that.
There we go.
That's a
yeah, you see, I was listening. That's all good. Okay, so I was thinking back, like, Star Trek for me. Now, obviously, I wasn't alive when the original series was on, but I certainly grew up with, as things started to grow, which would lead to the sort of reinvention of Star Trek with the motion picture in '79, I think. I can remember my first memory of Star Trek is having that ridiculous light up helmet toy. Right? Because I think I was big into Star Wars, and my parents were like, well, let's get you a space toy. Oh yeah, this Star Trek thing will be great. And I had that, and I had the phaser with the flashlight with the little discs that you could fly the Enterprise around your walls and stuff. So, I knew Star Trek was there, and I knew it was, had to deal with space and stuff. But obviously the thing that really, my big fandom began with Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like that was, I can remember later on, when that was on video to VHS, I can remember watching that repeatedly with my brother. And from there, just, yes, have been interested in it, loved it, really fell hard for Next Generation in college.
Oh, yeah.
And then from there, it was just, saw the movies, everything.
Yeah.
Rest is history.
Yeah, for me, I had seen the movies because in the 80s, there weren't a lot of sci-fi things out there. So kind of if you were a sci-fi fan, you kind of had to watch the Star Trek movies because Star Wars only did 3 movies, and that was it. Like Star Trek, every couple of years, another one would come out. So even if they were bad, they were something that we got to see. I was aware that Star Trek was a thing, and I saw the movies, but I was never really a Star Trek fan. I was just sort of, Star Wars was obviously my jam, but Star Trek was just another thing until Next Generation came around, and then suddenly it was new Star Trek for us, like for that age group. So yeah, same kind of thing. I was in high school and college right around the time it came out, and so I started watching it on a regular basis, and then by the time I got to the end, I wouldn't miss an episode. Like it was appointment television for me.
Absolutely.
Like I had to see the next episode right away, and I found friends who also watched it, and they're like, we got to the point where we would even have like viewing parties when there's going to be season premieres or season finales, like when there's big time. My friend Jason even figured out where the prop master had bought Picard's coffee cups that he also drank the thing, and found it and bought them. I mean, like they were just like regular ones, but they looked very sci-fi, and so we would have like our tea Earl Grey.
Your Earl Grey tea, yeah, exactly.
as we were watching it too. So yeah, and then I pretty much watched everything that's come out. I haven't seen every single episode of every single show. I will admit that here at the top before we get too far into Star Trek. I have not seen every single Star Trek thing or read every Star Trek novel. Like I said, I like what I like, and I know when I'm going to be bored in something, so I tune out. So there are several series that I have not. I've seen probably most of almost everything, but not everything. And that really not the point here, because we're not here to like necessarily celebrate Star Trek or review it or any of that stuff. What I want to do here in these episodes is provide a way in for people who have never gotten into Star Trek at all. I want to like show you sort of why I think that it's important and interesting, and then give you like signposts along the way so that you can go into it without being completely overwhelmed by the vast amount of material out there, because there is a lot of it. So over these course of episodes, I'm going to do it. So I'll get into the specifics of like how I'm going to do it as we go on to it, but that's the goal of this one is not to tell you Star Trek is awesome and here's why. There's plenty of shows for that. There's some great Star Trek podcasts out there who are done by really dedicated hardcore fans, and God bless them for it. May the great bird of the galaxy provide shelter for all of them as they move forward. But so that's not what I'm doing here. I'm trying to like talk to the people who are curious about Star Trek but don't know where to start, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. So I guess, what's the big deal? Why does it matter? Why is Star Trek still a thing? And I guess, for me, what makes Star Trek different from other future sci-fi shows is that it's aspirational. So, what does that mean? Well, there's a lot of dark takes on the future. So we've got, Blade Runner, where the corporations have taken over. We have Matrix and Terminator, where the robots have taken over. There's all these really harsh, awful versions of it. But Star Trek isn't that way. Star Trek says, if we work together, we can do something amazing. And it shows human beings, because it's about us, because it's our history, it's everything that has ever happened in history is part of Star Trek, with some slight differences because there's time travel involved every once in a while. So sure, history has been altered a little bit by people inadvertently coming back in time, but it's mostly the same thing. So all the merits and flaws of history are part of Star Trek history. But it says that when things are at their worst, people pulling together can do something amazing. So the thing that's cool about Star Trek is it says together we're better. So in the future of Star Trek, after all these terrible things, and we'll get into specific lore and stuff too. This is just broad overstrokes I want to talk about. The rough thing is that after World War III and after a terrible war that destroyed like more than half of humanity, everything got really bad. But then some events happened that caused people to come together, and they, instead of going back to the same things or territorialism or tribalism, they said, what if we just pooled all of our resources and helped each other? What if we eliminated hunger? What if we eliminated the need for shelter, that everybody had enough to eat, everybody had a place to stay, eliminated money? What if no one had power over anyone else, and it was all uniform? And it was all these things where once everyone had what they needed to survive and get through, suddenly all the conflicts went away because no one was hoarding anything, no one was stopping anything. The ideologies, borders, race issues, they all sort of faded away because the humanity became one people, and then they looked to the stars and went, well, we need to see what's out there. So the central premise of Star Trek is that humanity has fixed its shit, essentially. Like they like, not that humans are perfect now, but all the conflicts in Star Trek are out there. They're things that are happening out there. It's still aggressive things or alien races or weird machines or that kind of stuff. The problem isn't people fighting with each other. So the crews are sort of harmonious, but the conflicts are things that they discover as they're trying to help people out in the universe. And that's different than pretty much everything out there. Star Trek was sort of the first one to do this, and that is what I think really responded with people and what I respond to when I watch it. And so the best Star Trek are those that way, when it's a crew of people working together, even if they fight, even if they argue, even if they don't agree on how everything works. It's not like everybody is just completely in lockstep. But it's never personal in there. They're never at each other's throats, and then maybe they'll save someone, but right now they're too busy trying to kill each other. That's never a Star Trek thing. So is that, I mean, I'm not speaking for you, but like, is that what you sort of have responded to in Star Trek?
Yeah, I think for me, and I know a lot of people have talked about this, kind of that comparison, and I know this has almost become a cliche. Mm-hmm. The comparison between Star Wars and Star Trek is the comparison between faith and reason.
That's actually right? the very next thing I'm going to talk about is this.
Oh, okay. So there we go. I mean, like, no,
segue.
and I totally and all of that I totally agree. I think when you understand the history of Star Trek, the vision of what it was at the time that it came out and what it was trying to say and do, it still resonates today because of that hopefulness. Like that there is hope even in the strife and the current times and the wars and disagreements and all the stuff we're dealing with today.
Yeah.
You have that, we're gonna figure it out. And the idea that, I love the way you say that, boom, once we've settled it here, well, yeah, we looked at the stars because there's a whole universe, right, to figure out. And I think one of the neat things about Star Trek in that respect has been, it's not about, I know sometimes we joke about like, oh, like if we go to other, the socio-political arguments that we have in the world today, don't bring your problems here, right? It's not like we went out there, like in the Star Trek universe, to mess up the universe. Mm-hmm. No, we really have taken, it is the true story of trying to learn from your history. Mm-hmm. That is, I think, one of the great aspects of Star Trek is we really are trying never to forget.
Yeah.
Actually take those lessons and convey them to the rest of the universe. Yeah, that's timeless. That we should all be aspiring to that. There is no better word to that. It is absolutely aspirational.
Yeah.
Great.
So, obviously, the big question is Star Wars versus Star Trek. So, we're going to get a little bit. So, because the big question is, why am I doing this in 5 parts? And this is exactly why. Well, I guess the main reason is so we don't have another 2-hour show. Like, I'm not going to do that again. Like, that was a marathon, right, both for us and for you, and I'm not going to do that. So we're gonna break this down into smaller things. But also, this is the question of what makes Trek different than other big pop culture franchises, and the biggest one being Star Wars. So let me use a really, really bad analogy. This came to mind, and I have not thought of a better one. So Star Wars is steak. It's like it's you can, there's a lot of different things you can do with steak. There's different cuts, there's different ways to grilling, there's marinades, there's sauces, there's accoutrement, but at the end of the day, it's still steak. It's good steak, but it's still steak. So I apologize to all the vegetarians and vegans out there, but substitute your favorite tofu-esque
Beyond Meat,
yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
Impossible Burger, sure.
But Star Trek is a boutique restaurant. So when you go in, you might not like every dish, but there's a bunch of different things on the menu. Now, they're all coming from the same kitchen, so they're all going to have a similar sort of style and that thing, but there are different things you can get. So I'm not saying that Star Trek is Jack in the Box, who seems to want to cover every single thing. I'm sorry for the people who are on the East Coast who have no idea what I'm talking about, but Jack in the Box is a chain restaurant who tries to have everything, like burgers, tacos, whatever.
Sure.
If you buy it, we'll sell it. It has a bunch of different options so that's why I'm doing multiple episodes of this, is because not all Star Trek will fit you. So, and even those of us who are big Star Trek fans have our preferences. We have things we like a lot and things we don't like as much. Now, we keep going to the restaurant because we like what we've had in the past.
Right.
But a lot of times we'll just order the same stuff off the menu by rewatching the same episodes that we like again. Now it's like, oh, we have a brand new menu item, and you try it and go, No, I think I'll stick with my favorite. I like number 7. I'll just gonna keep my number 7.
No, now see, and look at, I think that's valid, because if you go to the core of the story, and again, it's kind of a ridiculous comparison, because you're talking about Star Wars. Yes, Star Wars now today we have all this multitude of content, right? Yes. Same thing with Star Trek. But if you just pare it down, Star Wars is now and forever will always be about one thing: the struggle between light and dark.
Yeah,
that's it. It is nothing more than that. That is all it's about.
And they found a multitude of ways to tell that story, but it's still the same story.
Of course. It's and actually that's why I think that analogy works, because steak. I mean, it's steak, right? That's it, right? Okay. No, Star Trek. Wow, when you look at what they've done in terms of series, and we'll talk about this. We're kind of like in our third age now of Star Trek, like right. It's third generation. You're seeing just this incredible complexity of, you're dealing with species, you're dealing with relationships, you're dealing with sides, you're dealing with technology, you're dealing with stimuli, you're dealing with the universe. No, there's so many different things doing it. And what I think that is really kind of neat to see, which you're just now starting to see in the Star Wars universe, is the creator, the obviously the production companies are finally starting to say, okay, we're going to do this, and it's only going to focus on this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, wow, these little layers of that. It's exciting to see it in the Star Wars universe finally happening.
Right.
But Star Trek, man, it's been pretty rich.
They've been doing it for a lot longer, and they've tried a lot more stuff than Star Wars is coming to this late.
Like, yes, absolutely.
And sure. They're doing great stuff, but I think a lot of people will look at who they picked to do the reboot. To do the brand new thing. They picked the guy who they had also picked to do the Star Trek reboot. Let's not forget.
Yeah.
J.J. Abrams did Star Trek first.
Yes.
Before they brought him over to Star Wars, and that's not an accident.
No, absolutely not.
I'm not going to get into which is better. Like I said, they're different things, but that's the point. So I hope you like that metaphor, because I'm going to be doing it for the next 5 episodes. So starting now, because menu item number 1, watch your head in the captain's cabin.
From 2001, it's Enterprise.
That sudden intake of breath you heard was all the hardcore Trekkies gasping. Yes, I'm saying the most accessible of all the Star Trek series for someone who's never watched Star Trek before is 2001's Enterprise.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Once you set it up, and when you first said it, I was like, are you serious? Yeah. Oh.
So 2001 was a strange time in American culture, and it was a strange time in Trek culture as well. So they had already had 3 successful television series. 4, actually, at that point. They had 4 successful television series, but numbers had started to go down. So you don't need to get into specific. We'll talk about all the other shows there. But let's say they had done a couple things, and the numbers had grown. But they wanted to do something different. So they decided to set this new show before any of the other shows. So at the time, this was the earliest that had ever been. So anyone who wanted to sit down and watch it didn't need to know anything about Star Trek, because it was coming from a place where none of the stuff had ever happened. So the movies hadn't happened, the television series hadn't happened, all that was in future stuff. So it also is a great place for us to start, because you don't need to know anything going into it. You just need to sit down and do it. Now, I will grant there is some nods and homages and that kind of stuff, and there's a whole temporal Cold War thing that's going on through the first couple seasons, but even they realized that was kind of a dumb idea at some point, and it just quietly gets taken care of. So don't get too wrapped up in that when you hear about that, because this is really a pretty bare bones in terms of sci-fi. Like, it is people in a spaceship going in space, and there are aliens. Yes, you have to accept that, but their ship is really not that fancy. It's pretty much like a submarine in space.
Yeah, submarine.
Absolutely. All the fancy stuff they have communicators, but we have cell phones. I mean, they do the same thing. They have phasers, but we've got tasers. I mean, like, it's really not that much different than what we have. They still have to get their food packed away and cooked. They have to go on a shuttle in order to go onto a planet. There's no futuristic 3D sci-fi video game rooms. Like it's just like you bring a book. Like maybe, hopefully they still have Kindles at that point, so they could just bring the stuff with them. But let's talk about fake history, like we were talking about before. So what do you need to know? Like what has happened to the world from here, us now in 2021, up until when the show launches? Everything that has happened in history is a part of Star Trek history. So you don't have to worry about like, oh, Genghis Khan actually, ruled Europe. No, it's everything is the same. So then, like we talked about earlier on, World War III happens, and then after World War III comes what's called the post-atomic horror. Now, they have never really gone too deep into what that was, but let's just say things were really, really bad, because by the time they come out of it, everyone is basically living in tribes. So, like, there's no countries anymore, there's no any of that stuff. It's basically just people banding together to survive and find what they can. So, after the planet has sort of allowed life. So I think there's probably like a Mad Maxy kind of time in Star Trek history, but they don't really ever talk about that. So everyone is sort of scattered around. There's very little technology. There's just the old stuff that people have sort of cobbled together. But then a guy came along with a grand scientific idea, and he had figured out how you could do faster than light travel, like basically something beyond just using solid propellant or anything to get around. And his name was Zefram Cochrane. So Zefram Cochrane developed what's called warp drive, a faster than light thing. I'm not going to get too deep into sci-fi stuff. That stuff is out there. You can find it. But let's just say that it allowed space to warp around something in this field and go faster than light. So he, through various imaginations, and there was people came back in time and witnessed this, but let's just say for to keep things as simple as we can in this complex universe, he designed a ship, got it up there, and basically just took a cruise around the solar system, just like took his ship out and at warp, sort of went all the way to the out and then came all the way back in. And for the first time, humanity had traveled faster than light. And that got people's attention because that's when the Vulcans showed up. So an alien race noticed this was happening and came down and went, hey, it turns out you guys actually are capable of faster than light travel. It means you can leave your solar system. So we kind of need to tell you about what's going on in the universe. And so the Vulcans become very, very important to humanity's history. You might have heard of them. They're probably the most famous guy is a fella named Spock. After that happens, basically humanity comes together. Like they go, oh, there's more than just us. Okay, maybe we should think a little higher. And that's when they start solving their problems. So that this is the period that like people now go, could you tell us more about what they did? Because we'd really like to get to that period where everyone pulls together and do that. Because 100 years later, that is when Star Trek Enterprise actually takes place. I should say it's also commonly known as Star Trek Enterprise, but when it premiered, it was just Enterprise because they were trying to distance themselves from Star Trek. They were trying to get in people who hadn't seen a lot of Star Trek stuff, so they're trying to get in the casual viewer, to try and expand the numbers.
Now, are you gonna talk about the big thing about this? Should I just go ahead and belt it out?
No, we're gonna get there. We'll get there.
Okay, good. All right, good.
Right now, we're bringing them into the boat. I don't want to scare them away quite yet. But
very nice. And
I know that the hardcore Star Trek fans are like, you have to talk about it. We're gonna talk about it. Don't worry.
We're gonna talk. Okay, all right. I'm loving this so far. Go ahead. I gotcha.
Okay, so 100 years later, we decide that now is the time we're going into space, and they create a brand new space-going vessel, and of course they call it Enterprise. The Vulcans are still here, so the Vulcans have been hanging around and sort of guiding humanity, like basically telling them sort of what it is. But at the same time, they have been, quote unquote, holding humanity back. Like they're basically saying, "You're not ready. You're not ready. You're not ready. Like you're not ready. Like there's way worse things out there. You are not ready to face them. Emotionally, mentally, societally, you are not ready for what's out there." But then an alien comes crashing down to Earth and starts a whole chain of events that gets them going. And that's the first episode. It's called Broken Bow. Regardless of anything else, you need to watch that episode because not only is it a really good episode of Enterprise, it's a really good episode of Star Trek. It's probably the best pilot episode ever of Star Trek. I mean, like, there's a lot of the pilots are pretty rough. and you kind of have to go, ooh, they got a long way to go. But Broken Bow is pretty solid. Like, I mean, it really sets up all the characters. You get to meet them all. And in terms of that, I'm not going to go into a ton of like what happens in the show. That's not really what we're at here. I might give you some teases just to get you into it, because obviously it's been this long and you haven't seen it yet. So there's some stuff that, so the show does a really good job of introducing all of these characters. So I'm going to let them do it because they're the professional. But there's two exceptions I'm going to make. And then obviously, Rob, if you want to talk specifically about characters, we can do that too. But the two I want to mention are Captain Archer. So he's your guy. So like you have your stalwart Johnny Squarejaw, tough, rough guy on the bridge. And he's played by Scott Bakula. Now, geeks of our age know him as Sam Beckett from Quantum Leap. But then some of the other ones probably know him from NCIS New Orleans. So he's the lead of that show too. He's a great leading man, as is shown by the fact that he's led 3 really popular shows. He's great. He's a little bit self-righteous, but he's also a captain, and he's the only one in space, and he's by himself, so you kind of have to give him a little bit of righteous. He has a lot of humanity can do these kind of speeches where you're like, all right, take it down a notch. But he sort of eases into the role a little bit too, because you can tell he's under a lot of pressure at the top. And the second character I want to mention is T'Pol. So T'Pol is the full-blooded Vulcan science officer that is assigned to the ship. So she is one of only 2 aliens on the ship. So that's the other thing that's nice about Enterprise, is that you don't have to get caught up in a lot of lore and sci-fi of the aliens, because all the rest of the ship are all humans. So everyone on it are human beings except for 2 exceptions, and she's one. The other one is the Doctor. He's fantastic, but I want to talk about her. She's played by Jolene Blalock, and so in the words of Kelly LeBrock, don't hate her because she's beautiful. So, like I said, this was a weird time for Star Trek. And so one of the things they were trying to do is get in people, and they're like, let's cast the most beautiful woman we can find. So unfortunately, Jolene Blalock is an attractive woman, and you're just going to have to deal with it. She's also a really good actress, and she's really good in this character, and she's one of the best characters on this entire show. Her journey is fantastic. She playing a Vulcan is really freaking hard, as any actor who's played a Vulcan can tell you. To not react is completely the opposite of what actors are taught. But Trekkies were really, really terrible to her, and it pisses me off so much. Toxic fandom is not new. Unfortunately, it's been around for a long time, and they were horrible to her. So much so that she has been basically chased out of the business. I hope that she has retired happily and is living a good life, because she's not working anymore, and it's a shame, because we are the ones who suffer for these toxic assholes. I'm gonna put the explicit rating on this one too, because they deserve that. She's great. So like when you see her though, you're gonna be like, oh wow, because she was a model. And she is attractive, but don't hate her because of that. I beg of you. I think I've said enough about that.
I agree. Absolutely.
From the cast you want to single out as being people to watch?
Well, they the character of Jonathan Archer, I mean, Scott Bakula is perfect, because it's this rugged, chisel-jawed, submarine captain. Yeah. That's literally, that's what they're going for with this. And I did think that the rest of the characters, they definitely, obviously, tried to work in diversity, which was a great thing. Linda Park plays the communications officer, Hoshi Sato, and you got a couple. I think is it Travis Mayweather, played by Anthony Montgomery, is the helmsman, African American, and then isn't one of the characters is it Dominic Keating? Who's his accent? I forget what nationality he is.
He's from the UK, but I'm not exactly sure if they said where.
It definitely, what they did, I think what's great is they did a great job, is that, again, if you understand, this show is before the original series.
Yes.
You're seeing that sort of everyone coming together, like you said. That's how they're working the problems together as humans. So I thought it was really nice. I love the fact that he has the dog, Captain Archer.
That's right, he brings his dog with him. Yeah.
It adds it definitely is a scruffier, more mechanical science fiction show. And the cast, I think, works well with this, and it does. I think it makes a lot of sense. T'Pol, no, you're absolutely right, though. I even remember that.
Yeah. It was a big Like,
and there's other issues that we'll probably talk about.
Yeah.
There's other issues that the show was up against.
oh yeah. Oh, there's
Why those things happen.
yeah, we're gonna get into like I'm not saying Enterprise is the perfect show.
Oh God, no.
As we get on through, but like that was she was unfairly judged for that. Before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about Star Trek shows in general, because Enterprise is one of many, and so like there's a lot of things that are very similar in all the Star Trek ones. So Star Trek is not Game of Thrones. I should just move on from there and just let people think about it. No, what I mean by that is it is not one story continuously told over the course of it. It is like a multiple year voyage, but it's not proceeds. It's not like chapter by chapter, like, and the character starts here, they end there. It's not like at the end you're going to have this big dramatic change. Star Trek is a procedural. It's actually much more similar to CSI and Law and Order and Monk and Psych and all those things. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a different style of storytelling than what we're used to. Like now in the binge culture, a character will, we get one season dropped at once. A character will change over the course of it. Star Trek characters don't really change that much. Like they do, but it's usually very slowly, and it's usually the actors just getting used to the role. So like you'll find by the end of a series, and a character is much more like their actor than they were at the start. There's the idealized version that the writers thought up before they cast, and then by the time the show ends, it's basically like half what they're writing and then half what the actor is bringing to it, with various exceptions. I mean, there are some actors who completely transform themselves to be that character, and they are like that all the way through. But really don't expect a lot of big hugging and learning and changing over the course of it. And then I'm going to lean in, turn up your volume, lean into your phones or your car radios or whatever it is, because I'm about to tell you one of the great secrets of Star Trek. This is one of the things that all Trekkies know, but no one ever says out loud, and I'm going to say it out loud to you. Oh. This is one of the great truths of the universe of Star Trek. The first season of every Star Trek show is the worst. You all know it's true.
It's okay, and let's just say there are some series that it's actually the first two seasons, but okay,
true.
It's fine.
They're very true.
But yeah, the first seasons are clunkers.
They're always the worst of the thing. That other Star Trek shows get better with age, and the longer they go, the better they get. And this is an exact example of that.
And how important that is to understand that, because here's why. So much of today's world, and for a lot of shows, for a lot of normal network television shows, you wouldn't have Star Trek, because guess what? They'd be canceled by the end of the first season.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because it's not good. It's not great. And it really doesn't get its legs until the second or third season in a lot of respects.
Yeah.
And that's something to just talk about the fandom, is because, there's a commitment.
Yeah.
When you do a Star Trek show, there is a commitment to seeing it through.
Yeah.
And then, after a certain while, it just, if it doesn't work out, and Enterprise, of the 5 of there's been 8 live action Star Trek series so far, including streaming ones.
Yeah.
Of the 8.
And obviously we're doing 5 episodes, so I'm not going to talk about all.
Oh, no. You're just, this is a great entryway. If you're going to talk about this, Enterprise, and notably, just spoiler, it is the shortest. It ended earlier than all the other shows so far of the current running ones. We don't know.
Right.
But so yes. No, we get it, but watch the first episode.
Yes, obviously this,
and then it gets
you sample it. Okay, so now that you're like curious, Enterprise, that's interesting. Like, I want to see T'Pol, I want to see Archer, I want to see all these things, I want to see the thing. Now I'm going to get into some warnings. Okay, so remember how I talked about how weird culture was at this time? Well, and how weird Star Trek was at this time? The executives sort of looked at what was popular and went, we need to have all this stuff in our Star Trek as well. So you get a lot of stuff that doesn't fit at all with Star Trek that are crammed into these couple episodes. And the big one is unnecessary sex and violence. Okay, I'm not going to kink shame here, but there's ways to do this. Like, I've watched all of Westworld, I've watched Game of Thrones. Like, I get it, it's part of the thing, but the way they do it is so ham-handed and exploitative that it's just icky. Like so when I think it's actually in the first episode, they have to go to a foreign planet. They've never been there before. When they come back, they don't have, any high-tech devices in order to make sure they don't have alien microbes. So they have to use a gel So there's poor Jolene Blaylock, in her first couple weeks, having to strip down to her underwear with one of the other male cast members and have gel rubbed all over her body.
It's a little bit how do I want to say this? I'm going to mash some things together. It's a little bit Starship Troopers meets Riverdale.
Yeah.
It's
just like, this is just here for the gifts. I mean, it's just here. Yes. Just so people be like, it's gross. And I want to prepare you for that, because they do a lot of stuff. And T'Pol is probably the smartest person on that ship. She's their science officer. And because she's also the pretty girl, they have her doing all this stuff like, we're captured by Andorians. You can share my blanket if you want to snuggle up. It's like, well, just no, please, just just stop, just don't.
Yeah.
But so once again, as the show goes, that stuff gets worked out of it. But at the start of it, they're still trying to be doing everything they can to try and get new people in, and it doesn't work at all. And so there's a lot of pieces of the show that go flying off as it goes along, and that is one of them. And then the big one we have to talk about is the theme. So Star Trek is known for its big, broad, sweeping themes. I mean, everybody knows the original Star Trek theme and stuff. We can't use it even here because it's all copyrighted. But there's some great ones out there. I actually just recently heard a compilation of someone did all of the themes on a violin. It was gorgeous. It's on YouTube. You should if I figure out how to do show links, I'll put it in the show links. So for this one, because they were trying to be hip and popular, they decided they were going to use a pop song. They said, well, what do people like? Well, how about a Rod Stewart song written by Diane Warren from the Patch Adams soundtrack?
Oh,
Sold.
my God. Sung by another guy?
We're not going to buy the Rod Stewart one. It's a cover of a Rod Stewart song from a Robin Williams movie that is not really well loved. Diane Warren is great. She's won a ton of Grammys and Oscars and all that kind of stuff, and that's fantastic. But this is not her best work, and it's painful. It's
you know why? Do you know why, Kyle?
Why is that?
Because it's been a long road.
It's been a long road
to get from there to here.
Yeah. Rob, you got to have the faith of the heart.
Because they're not going to hold me down.
No.
Kyle, they're not going to hold me down.
So you think okay, that's just like your opinion, man. True. I could say there's a petition to get it removed at the time, so a lot of the Trekkers agreed. And if you want a higher opinion than mine, I would refer you to the last Scotty that we knew, Simon Pegg, who referred to it in an interview as, quote, probably the most hideous Star Trek moment in history, end quote.
It's really okay. Can we talk about this? Just
please, let's talk about it, because just basically when it comes down to it, when the theme starts, when you hear it's been a long road, just fast forward to the show.
Now, no, see, no, I would say that. Turn the volume down. Because the title graphics are really well. In fact, I would say Discovery's title graphics are inspired more by Enterprise's graphics than any other Star Trek show.
Yeah.
So actually, it is worth seeing. Yeah, just turn the volume down a little bit. Now here's the deal: the song, if it hadn't been used like this, if it hadn't had a weird tail, it's an uplifting song. It's about working your way through life and getting someplace. Yeah. Okay, it's fine.
It's a 90s cheese ball.
No, it's a 90s. It's a Rod Stewart song, which no offense to Rod Stewart, but I mean, come on, all right? Forever Young, that's all you need, right? Yeah. Or that's it. So anyway, here's the thing.
Yeah.
I find what's so peculiar about this is that one, I love the fact that it's the story of the Enterprise, which, by the way, in case you haven't seen it, there's the shots of this test shuttle, the boats. It's really
all the ships that have borne the name of Enterprise leading up to the current ship.
And I think Alan Shepard, the first American man in space, is there in it. It's showing you us reaching for the stars. I mean, honestly, it is actually kind of a neat, it's a neat montage of stuff. The weirdest thing about this is, do you know, was it the third season or the fourth season? They retooled the song.
Yeah.
And they added drums. They increased the beat. And the first time I actually heard that, and I was like, wait, how is this different? It's the same song. And then now you can go online and you can compare the two. it's unbelievable that they spent the time remixing the song. Like that was going to make it better. Like
that
what?
was what you thought the problem was? Like the BPM was the problem with the song?
What are you doing? Like, no, it's
pretty terrible. And so along with that, fast forwarding through that, I would say the other thing that you have to understand is that you don't have to watch every episode. Now, that goes for every television show, but like especially for Star Trek, there are lots of really good episode guides that people have put together of like to watching. I highly recommend checking them out. And obviously, there are a bunch of different ones, so you have to what your taste is. There are some terrible episodes of Star Trek out there, and that runs the entire gambit for 55 years now. All of they have some really bad episodes that do not need to be seen. So if you're loving Enterprise, great, watch them all. But I can tell you, it's okay to skip around. Plus, you're a smart person. If you get to the end and you realize you want to go back, you can go back and watch the ones that and go, oh, okay, like I'm already loving this entire crew, so seeing new adventures is kind of a fun thing. So if you skip around, you kind of have like a lost season that you can then go back. And then one last proviso as you're working your way through. So let's say that you watched it and you're digging it and you're liking it and you've picked 50 episodes, whatever, and you've gone through and you're like, this is really good. Like, I wonder how it wraps up. Well, here's my advice to you. Don't watch the last episode.
Oh God, no.
There is a 2-part episode right before it with action and adventure and thrills and stuff. And when you get to that point, just go, yeah, and then whatever you write in your head canon is going to be better. What do you think the last episode of Enterprise should be? Just think about that. Because the actual last episode of Enterprise is so reviled by the fans, such a slap in the face to this entire crew that it became their last episode that, everyone hates it.
Now, okay, so we're going to talk about this because, again, now that, I mean, like, when you hear that, you're like, well, I got to see what happens, right?
You don't. You don't.
Well, no, and of course.
Love the characters, you don't want to see that.
Right, so if you follow along.
Yeah.
First of all, could it be fixed? Do we want to talk about exactly what's so reviled about it? Like, why it's bad?
Spoilers. So
spoilers. Spoiler warning.
Thing. So, so they have their sort of finale, and I don't think that they officially knew that this was going to be their last episode.
No,
I mean, it feels like a little bit, but I feel like that if this episode had been placed anywhere else, it would have been fine. But the fact that it was their finale, some of the finales of Star Trek episodes are amazing television. And this is not. And so when you sort of compare it, that's what the problem is. So instead of doing a typical thing, even I think in Voyager's finale, they jump ahead in time and they show like sort of what happened.
Next Generation does the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the whole other thing, right?
Other thing. But this one, they instead of doing a finale of Enterprise, they decided to do an episode of Star Trek Next Generation guest starring the cast of Star Trek Enterprise. It's so bizarre and so disrespectful. It's about a character from another show watching the highlight reel of shows we'll never get to see of Star Trek Enterprise. So it's about another character who you won't know, because if you're listening to this guy,
you're starting here, right? If you're starting here,
you have no idea who this guy is, and you just see him going in and basically playing back videos of what happened to the Enterprise crew over the course of the next 10 years or whatever the time span he covers. And then it's basically like, oh well, he got a good lesson from it, so way to go, Enterprise! You inspired a random character on another show.
Well,
that's your legacy.
That turned out really important. That character's important later on, as we found out.
That character's not important, but the fact that he is the central character in the finale of a show that he's not on.
Okay.
Now
wait. Okay. So here's a question. Has anyone, and I haven't, I could have gone a little bit deeper in this.
Yeah.
Has anyone taken that final episode and just edited it out? Like, edit all that stuff out?
It's so, I don't know. That I'm sure there's probably the Star Trek fan community is amazing. The stuff that they have put together, I would expect it is. But from what I remember from the one time I watched it, and I don't think there'll be a second viewing.
It's a lot of it.
Yeah, unless I get hired for a rewatch of something.
Right.
That it's so intermingled and like it's not entirely linear. So it's like even if you put it together, it would just seem like you're just like jumping tracks on a DVD.
See, and by the way, side note, let's explain this. Okay, like why did they do this? Well, if you don't know Next Generation, it's Next Generation characters.
Yeah.
Next Generation, wildly popular.
Yeah,
there was that
most popular of all of the shows.
They had some experience though in other Star Trek shows before this, reintegrating different times of Star Trek and using old footage and digitally putting people, like they had a little bit of experience. I think they thought in doing this, they thought it would work. It doesn't.
Yeah, it didn't work. So those are your provisos. So other than that, I say go forth and enjoy Enterprise, get into it, see if that's something you want. And that's pretty much the end of my treatise about things. So that's my recommendation for taking your first steps. But wait, you say, I have a much more adventurous palate. I like to try new things, unfamiliar dishes, international cuisine. I want something heartier that will stick with me longer.
Ooh, okay.
Well then, intrepid eater, I have just the meal for you, and we'll dig into it next time.
Oh! Well, I'm hungry.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm just gonna wait and see. This was I'm intrigued now. And I learned something. I totally want to rewatch some parts of Enterprise, especially the first episode.
And you have that song running through your head.
Well, you know.
Because it has been a long road.
It's been, faith, what is it? Heart of the Faith?
Faith of the Heart.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, sure.
All right. So thank you all for listening. We're going to be back to talk more Trek. I appreciate your time and your attention. I'm not going to ask you to do anything, but go out and do something nice for yourself. Thanks so much for listening. This has been the next chapter in the Curiosity Codex, but there are still many pages left to decipher. We're part of the True Story FM family of podcasts. Find out more about us at truestory.fm. Our theme music is Intrusion by Severed Personality, aka Kevin MacLeod. The voice of the Codex is Vicky Hall. Find her on the web at vickyhall.squarespace.com. My co-host is Rob Cabasco. Find him with me on the Marvel Movie Minute podcast. And my name is Kyle Olson.
The Codex is closed. For now.